Oh, hello. If you've made it to this video, you either just got a sewing machine, yes, or you have one sitting in the back of your closet collecting dust that you haven't pulled out in years and years because you don't know how to set it up. Well, hello, welcome to Steph Time. I'm Stephanie, and today I'm going to show you the basic anatomy of your sewing machine and how to set it up to sew for the very first time. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to my sewing machine. This is the Singer Quantum Stylus 9960. It is computerized, but don't worry if you have a mechanical sewing machine. We're gonna go over all of it. So first off, I have already plugged in my power cable as well as my presser foot cable, and we're gonna turn this baby on. So to start out, we're gonna need to insert a needle and a presser foot. I'm guessing they don't come shipped like this. This may already be on there if it's been in the back of your closet. So to start out, I've got a universal needle here. I'm going to take the flat side of the needle, and that's gonna go towards the back of the sewing machine. Before you put this needle in, put a little piece of paper here, put a piece of tape. I don't care what it is. The last thing you wanna do is drop this needle inside your sewing machine. You'll never be able to get it out. So I'm going to insert the needle like this, make sure it's all the way up, and tighten that, finger tight, and then we're gonna take a flathead screwdriver, tighten it a bit more. All right, next we are going to put on our presser foot. This is the A presser foot. This is going to be your most generic, all-inclusive presser foot. It's good for pretty much everything. So we're gonna lift this little lever in the back and put that presser foot on. Ta-da! Amazing. All right, now we need to thread this bad boy. And by doing that, we need to put in some bobbin thread as well as some top thread. This is the thread I chose for today. We're going to insert this spool of thread up here, making sure that whatever it was hooked on, a lot of times on a spool of thread, there will be a little like dash in the side. We're gonna make sure that's pointed towards the bottom so that when the thread is unwinding, it doesn't get caught mid-sewing. It has definitely happened to me. So first we're going to thread our bobbin. Mine has instructions here on the top of my machine. Yours might as well, but if not, it's a pretty easy process. We're going to go through number 1, and then we're gonna skip number 2. We're gonna go past it and thread back here and around this little circle thing. And now we're ready to thread a bobbin. I'm gonna pull a little new bobbin. We're going to make sure that the edge of the thread is clean. So we're gonna give that a fresh snip. We're gonna thread that through the whole of this bobbin. And we're gonna put it on our bobbin spool thing. We're gonna press it to lock it in, and that will engage the bobbin winder. And then we're just gonna use our presser foot to press that down and let it go. Mine automatically stops. You wanna fill the bobbin as much as you can without it starting to overflow the edges. All right, it is telling me that the bobbin is all ready to go. I'm gonna snip that. And now we're going to put it in the machine. You may have a top loading bobbin holder or a side loading bobbin holder. I have had a sewing machine with both or with either. This one is a top loading sewing machine, but if yours is a side loading sewing machine, you might have to like slide this off, and then there's a door there. You're gonna open that door and the bobbin will be in like a bobbin casing. You're gonna take that top off, and then it should look like what mine looks like. We're gonna load in the bobbin thread with the thread going counterclockwise. So facing up, the thread should be coming out of the spool counterclockwise. And then there's a little like grabber right here. We're just gonna thread that through there. And if yours is a side loading, that's when you'll thread it through, put the top back on, put it back in the side, put the door back on, and slide this back on. And this is the same. I'm just gonna put that lid on. Before we start to thread our sewing machine, we're gonna make sure that the presser foot is up. This affects tension, so we wanna make sure that it is up so that we don't deal with any tension issues. So we're going to put it through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, as I'm pulling it through, I'm keeping it taut, not super tight, but tight enough that it engages with the tension dials. If you put in there too loosey-goosey, there won't be any tension, so your thread will just be kind of crazy. And then I'm going to put it through the little loop above the needle. That just keeps it in place for the needle. My sewing machine has a threader, and it looks like this. But if you don't have a threader, no worries. We're just gonna cut a fresh snip on that thread. And this is optional, but I usually will lick mine. Why? Because it keeps all the threads down, makes it easier to thread. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. And then we're just gonna put it through the eye of the needle. And see how easy that was? That's because I licked it. So that's the trade secret, just lick your thread. So we've got our top thread, our bottom thread. So we are ready to sew. Let me show you some other features that will be very useful to you as you're sewing. This is the needle plate, and on top of my needle plate, I have seam allowance guides. So I have everywhere from 3/8 of an inch to 6/8 of an inch, as well as 1 centimeter, 1.5 centimeters, and 2 centimeters. Seam allowance is really important when you're sewing, and it's often included in your pattern. So having these guides here is really nice. When I'm sewing, I usually look at the guide, not what I'm actually sewing. Another important feature to know is your backstitch. I have a backstitch button, but basically what this does is as you're sewing, you can press it and it'll sew backwards, and then you let it go and it sews back forward. It ensures that the thread doesn't unravel after you're done sewing. So it's very important to do at the beginning and end of each of your straight stitches or zigzag stitches. So that's a great feature to know. Mine has a speed levers. Obviously the pressure on your presser foot is going to make it go slower or faster, but this basically puts a cap on it to say, no, you can't go super fast, or yes, you can. All right, let's go into your basic stitch types. There's really only two that you need to know starting out, and that's a straight stitch and a zigzag stitch. If you have a dial on your mechanical sewing machine, no worries. You probably have 5 straight stitches to choose from and maybe 3 zigzag. Those usually differ by stitch length for straight stitch and stitch width for zigzag. But I've got my straight stitch and my zigzag. Straight is good for woven fabrics and pretty much anything you're trying to construct. And zigzag is great for knit fabrics, and if you don't have a serger, great for finishing the raw edge of your fabric. I have a great piece of scrap fabric here, and we want to always test on a scrap piece of fabric before we start sewing to make sure that we don't have tension issues and that everything is good to go before starting on our real project. So I've got my straight stitch selected, got my presser foot down, pressing down with my actual foot. I'm going to press the back stitch button. And then at the end of my stitch, I'm going to press that back stitch button again and then lift my foot up when I'm done. I have a thread cutter, and that looks like this. A great feature, love it. But if not, you would just lift up the presser foot, pull those threads out and cut it. There is a thread cutter right on the side of your machine. So that's what that looks like. We've got a back stitch on both ends. Looking good, no tension issues. Love that. All right, let me show you a zigzag. So I've selected my zigzag stitch, and for the straight stitch and the zigzag, just go middle of the road to start out. You don't need anything too wide or long. All right. All right, and to lift up your needle, you have this hand crank on the side, which is really good if you're trying to move forward or backwards, as you can see here. But when you're done, you can just lift that needle up, pull your fabric out, and cut it right here on the side. All right, so that is what our zigzag stitch looks like. And on the back looks good. These little clumps of threads is just the starting threads. So if you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, just hold those threads out of the way as you start to sew. That's not indicative of an issue. If something's not working, I just take that bobbin thread out, rethread it through, and I'll go ahead and rethread my whole machine. That's a great place to start if you're having any issues. I know it's frustrating to have tension issues when you just want to get started, However, this is a really good way to just start over. I've done this quite a few times and it usually solves the issue for me. One more thing I want to show you before you go is how to clean your sewing machine. This is very important because as you use your machine frequently, now that you've gotten out of the box or out of the corner of your closet, many different dust fibers and fabric fibers will get in the inside of your machine and kind of clog it up. So my machine came with a tiny brush. Yours may not have, but you can use a toothbrush, a little makeup brush, whatever you've got handy is totally fine. So first, before I lift up this needle plate, which is how we're gonna get to the inside of the machine, we're going to remove that needle one more time. I'm gonna pull that bobbin out. And pull this thread out of the way as well. So there are screws on the needle plate that you'll just want to unscrew. It is a tight space. My sewing machine came with this little flathead screwdriver, but you can obviously use whatever you have available to you. All right, now that we've taken those screws out, we can lift that needle plate up and out of the way. And now we are going to clean this out. As you can see, there's a bit of dust. You can take the bobbin case out like that and clean underneath it. This is not as bad as it's been just because I've been kind of on top of cleaning it out, which you should be too. But we've all been in this situation where it's been a little bit longer than it should have. And it's pretty satisfying to clean. So not a bad thing to just do every once in a while. All right, and with that, you have all of the tools you need to begin sewing with your sewing machine. I hope that this inspires you to finally take your sewing machine for a ride and make something really fun. So if you like this video, make sure to like it. And if it was helpful for you, make sure to subscribe. And if you have any more specific questions, make sure to drop them in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye.